Hi everyone. I'm going to share my preliminary PhD research in Indonesia last year related to worker safety practice in tropical forests. So let's see in the first video. Then what do you think about their safety here? Yes, it's really risky and dangerous job actually. However, still you can still low practice of personal equipment used by the workers, for instance, gloves, face shield, or IFMA. And my focus here specifically related to my home country, Indonesia, who has about 120 million hectare of forest, in which 1/6 area managed by around 280 forest concessions, consisting of 20,000 forest workers. In fact, timber harvesting becomes the major of accident, contributed to 9% of national fatal accidents. So my research question here actually, what are the motivations and impediments to use personal protective equipment, specifically by fellers who cut the tree? I focus on 8 types of protective equipment under International Labor Organization's recommendation for forestry operation that are safety boots, safety trousers, clothing, gloves, helmet, goggles, visor, and air muff. And I observed at least 2 natural forest concessions during COVID-19 last year, one in East Kalimantan and another one in West Papua for 2 weeks each of them. However, I'm also planning to visit more sites later during the summer this year. So the forest in East Kalimantan was smaller in area, log production, and number of workers compared to the forest in West Papua. However, both forests have experience with international and national forest certification by Forest Stewardship Council and timber legality, respectively, including experience with reduced impact logging practices. Then my method has been approved by the University of Florida IRB with 3 strategies at least to obtain individual fellers' safety perceptions and experiences at work. I use a list of questions through questionnaires, in-depth semi-structured interview about 1 to 2 hours each participant, and all of them recorded. And last but not least, direct observation during harvesting processes to observe the use of protective equipment by the fellers. See, my findings here. These are the expected and completed personal equipment must be worn by the fellers in the forest in East Kalimantan. However, in fact, most workers worn different type of safety boots, for instance, and all of them did not wear ear muff at all. And not much different in the forest in West Papua, we can see they also had a procedure of specific personal equipment during work. However, in the field, the workers use only some non-standard personal equipment such as only cotton gloves, different type of earplugs, so on and so forth. So overall, I interview and observe around 8 fellers, 5 from East Kalimantan and 3 from West Papua, with age average about 36 years old with around 8 years experience in the forest harvesting, and mostly from elementary schools and having 2 children in average. And we can see that safety boots, close-fitting clothing, and safety helmet here where the top 3 of personal equipment were used by the failure. However, no single workers worn trouser and goggles during work. So I collected several relevant variables during interview to find the different implementation of personal equipment used in both companies. For instance, existing health insurance for workers, procedures, and training to use personal equipment, regular monitoring by supervisor or block inspector, like medical checkup, incentives or disincentives to wear personal equipment. And based on my observation, at least I explore three possibilities here. First, incentives and disincentives are one strategies to improve the use of personal protective equipment by failures. The forest in West Papua had implemented strictly about penalties for not using personal equipment, such as verbal or written warning letter. In contrast, they also provided a gift at the end of the year for worker who has the best performance, including use of personal equipment. Unfortunately, this policy was not clearly informed to the worker in the beginning of the year to motivate workers. And secondly, a regular briefing or meeting related to health and safety practices in West Papua by the supervisor and block inspector also help to increase the workers' awareness to use protective equipment. And lastly, regular support and monitoring from block inspector and supervisor help to be more engaged and care to the worker on the use of protective equipment here. I also observed the failures concern about not use of personal equipment during work, for instance, because of the design, maybe availability from the company, protective effectiveness, soft or hard materials, and uncomfortable issue like hot. So I identified the highest responses with the red square over there. And I found that for safety boots, for instance, slippery is the major issue for workers to use or not safety boots. A case in Kalimantan that all workers did not use boots from the company. Instead, they just bought by themselves another boots which was more less slippery, although it was really cheap, less than $2 each compared to the boots provided by the company. And second things, safety trousers seems challenging to be implemented in the field due to its availability or expensive maybe, and the company bought several pieces of safety trouser. However, only to prepare for first certification, then keep them in warehouse so as not to be damaged. While Google's and Visor seems uncomfortable for the workers due to several issues like sweating in hot condition. And then clothing, helmet, and together with boots are the top three of protective equipment for workers mostly used during work because the worker were clearly understood about their advantage for safety. Therefore, I think no need for incentive or disincentive to promote their use in this context of protective equipment for clothing and safety helmet. And then earmuff is quite strong here. Our workers in East Kalimantan refuse to use this equipment due to risky their safety or cannot hear when the tree falls, while another company in West Kalimantan were confirmed that earmuff really helped them to protect their ear from impairment. And lastly, gloves help workers use it during work, but not safe enough to protect them from a chainsaw because most workers prefer to use cotton material, which is less protection against chainsaw compared to hard leather material. So what next? I need to visit more forest concession to get more samples of workers in summer this year back to Indonesia, my home country. I also need to analyze the correlation between workers' background, like age, experience, so on and so forth, and use of personal equipment when I get more samples later. Lastly, I should also learn more about safety culture or behavior to understand better different perception from workers on use of personal equipment. And I need also to share about doing a field visit during the pandemic was not really easy job because most forest concession avoid people to come to prevent virus spreading. And I need to maintain health and safety practice everywhere and every time as a protocol. And lastly, more administration tasks before and after field visit, like doing COVID-19 tests with negative result. That's really necessary. But don't forget to find memorable experience during our observation as always, like local foods, new friends, free ecotourism area. That's really memorable things for me. And finally, thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions or suggestions, I'm very welcome to hear about it. And just my last note about safety, a true safety culture ensures every employee has the best chance of going home to their families at the end of a workday injury free. Thank you very much.